I just got out of the theaters from seeing Spider-Man Brand New Day on the big screen at an Amazon Prime early access screening. And without further ado, guys, there's a lot of great things to say about this film. A lot I want to talk about when it comes to this movie. So let's go ahead and jump right into the movie review. Let's go. Spider-Man Brand New Day is an action-adventure film directed by Destin Daniel Cretton, and inside of this film we see it's a brand new day for Peter Parker, fighting crime full-time as Spider-Man in a world that doesn't remember him, and the pressure of seeing his old friends move on without him sparks a change in Peter he may not have the power to control. But that transformation might also be the only thing that can stop a shocking new threat to the city and those he loves, a powerful villain no one can even see. The world may have forgotten Peter Parker, but he hasn't forgotten them. Now, this is the fourth installment when it comes to Spider-Man films inside the MCU and the 38th installment of an MCU film in general. So we are so far into this Marvel Cinematic Universe, and man, I gotta tell you guys, they're still managing to impress me. They're still managing to surprise me and to get me excited and anticipated for what's to come next. Okay, I was extremely excited walking into the theaters to see this film, as everyone's going to be, right? It's the new Spider-Man movie. Everyone goes out to see the new Spider-Man movie. So how did it turn out? Well, I'm happy to tell you guys that there is a lot of good to be said about this film. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my positives for Spider-Man Brand New Day. And for my first positive with this film, we have to talk about Tom Holland, who is of course playing Peter Parker, aka Spider-Man, the lead inside of this film. What he manages to do with this role, how effortless it comes across on screen, how he manages to blend so perfectly not only into the role of Peter Parker, but also the other half of him, that other side as Spider-Man, the masked hero who's living a double life, especially inside this film. Of course, where we last left off, Spider-Man casted a spell with Doctor Strange that made the entire world forget who he was. So now we got a brand new version of Peter Parker inside this film, and honestly, a version that a lot of people have been waiting for, right? A lot of people didn't like that he was Iron Man Jr. inside Spider-Man Homecoming, and that he didn't really feel like his own character fully like we've seen in other versions of Spider-Man, such as Tobey Maguire's version, which is something we might have to touch on later because Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man has a lot of similarities and resemblance to this new version of Peter Parker that we're getting inside the MCU, inside of Spider-Man Brand New Day, because we finally have a version of Spider-Man that's living on his own, working on his own, and really is isolated inside this film, and you can feel that for Peter. Okay, you feel sorry for him that he no longer has these close connections and relationships that we've grown fondly of throughout the past couple of movies, not only with his best friend Ned, but of course with Zendaya's character of MJ, the love interest inside of the past films. Not really inside this movie though, because of that spell, of course, and so that entire process forces Peter to have some transformation, not only physically but also emotionally inside of this film, and really find out who he is at his core. This movie has a lot of emotional impact when it comes to the life of Peter Parker and the loved ones around him, and there's so much emotional depth inside of this film that I feel like legitimately it's going to make a lot of MCU fans cry, especially the more closer you get towards the end of this film. Huge emotional payoff in the third act of this movie. No spoilers, of course, we are going to save those for much later on in the video, towards the very back end of the video. So just to let you know, you are safe going forward, for now at least. Okay, but one thing that did come out before the movie actually released was the fact that Peter was going to have organic webs inside of this film, similar to what we've seen in not only Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man, but also like Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man, right? So with that organic webs comes, as I said, an entire physical transformation for Spider-Man, and he has to deal with those issues while dealing with the list of villains inside of this film, which a couple of them we got to see throughout the trailers leading up to the release of this movie. Now, in this film, you get the most satisfying showcase of Spider-Man as a hero, as a character, a fully fleshed out character, with him having hero moments, saving people, with amazing scenes where he's traversing the city, which again was kind of a complaint with MCU Spider-Man, but I think they addressed a lot of those complaints, a lot of those criticisms about Spider-Man so far inside the MCU, and worked on them a lot and wrote in a way to address those inside of this film. Okay, like I said, you get the traversal scenes, you get the scenes where he's swinging around the city, and you get those cool Spider-Man moments where he's just interacting with the people of New York, saving them, having a little interaction. You even get like the classic Spider-Man quips, right, where he's about to fight someone, or maybe he's even in the middle of a fight and he's constantly mouthing off at them, as Spider-Man does. I've loved Tom Holland Spider-Man for many years now. I've been saying that he's my favorite Spider-Man and that he's pretty underrated if we're ranking them all together, but this movie right here truly solidifies him as my favorite Spider-Man going forward. And let's go ahead and address the rest of the cast, how everyone else did, because of course Tom Holland did fantastic as the lead, but how did everyone else do, right? How did Zendaya do as MJ inside this film? How did their relationship rekindle whatsoever, if it even rekindled? Well, I thought it was pretty satisfying in the way that they chose to go about Spider-Man Peter Parker attempting a rekindling of those relationships, and Zendaya's appearance inside this film was an appropriate amount. Okay, I like what she gave to this film. I like what her character had to offer. There was, again, some more emotional moments inside this movie tied to her character, no spoilers. And now also Ned, right? How did Jacob Batalon do inside of this film as Ned? Well, he's his same lovable self inside this movie. Now, again, that curse erased pretty much everyone's memories, so for the most part, you don't have all of those classic memories between him and Peter Parker, but yet his appearance inside this film, he's still that comedic relief. He's still that enjoyable presence on screen, which, by the way, lots of comedic relief inside this film, lots of levity, lots of jokes and quips, like I stated, right? That's classic Spider-Man feel right there, while not letting it overshadow the movie. So I'm very glad about that. You still get the more deeper emotional scenes. But moving on, let's address some more characters that we got to see inside the trailer and talk about how they performed inside this film, such as John Bernthal as the Punisher. Man, I was so excited to see John Bernthal inside of this film, and he killed it as he always does. This guy is a bona fide movie star, as we've constantly seen throughout the past couple of theatrical appearances he's made, right? He just was in a huge epic film in The Odyssey. Not only him, but also Tom Holland, Zendaya, right? They just were back to back in two of the biggest movies to come out this month and this year overall. But going into it, right, I was very worried that he wouldn't feel like Frank Castle, because this is a PG-13 film, and Frank Castle, the Punisher, is a rated R character, but I'm glad to say they got him right. Okay, they got the feel right. They got the Punisher down to a T. He still has his swear words, his cussing, his outbursts, right? They keep it leveled because it is a PG-13 film, but it's still there. All right, they pretty much reserve all the swearing in the film specifically for his character, so I'm glad they chose to do that. The gunplay with him, right? It's appropriate. They added it into places it would fit with, again, not ruining that PG-13 rating. And yeah, the Punisher was fantastic. They actually gave him a lot of screen time, a lot of moments in this plot, a lot of working with Peter Parker as a little bit of a duo, right? A back and forth duo, and I enjoyed all of their scenes together. It almost felt like buddy cop comedy at times when those two characters were on screen together, so that was very enjoyable here. Now let's go ahead and talk about Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk. Fantastic as always, okay? And even more so inside this film, because finally, as again, we got to see inside the trailers, you get that classic Hulk back from Avengers 2012. You get that classic experience. There's like a full-on scene with that classic Hulk, and it's really cool. It's really satisfying as a fan of these movies, as a fan of these films, and as a fan of the Hulk. Or, you know, if you've been a fan of the Hulk and you're a fan of the MCU and you've been watching these films, you would be pretty disappointed because you really haven't seen the guy since the opening scene inside of Infinity War, Avengers Infinity War, but he's back. For a moment inside this film, he's back. Mark Ruffalo does a fantastic job at that change between Bruce Banner to Hulk and makes it feel believable. Mark Ruffalo, you know, he's been doing a lot outside of the movie realm in terms of like politics and everything like that may be questionable, but in terms of his performance here as Bruce Banner, he still hits the nail on the head. He still delivers a satisfying performance that I think fans are going to be happy with. And I think Marvel has heard the complaints. Okay, we want more classic Hulk. I'm surprised he hasn't gotten like his own film inside the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I guess technically he has, right? Technically, The Incredible Hulk is the first Marvel film with it being a completely different actor, and Iron Man is technically the second if you look at the timeline, right? But anyway, another big character that I wanted to touch on, Sadie Sink, right? She's been in all of the promotional material, all the press run for this film, and everyone's been speculating on which character is she going to play. You know, as far as the trailer is concerned, all you got to see is she's playing a girl in a hood, and for the most part, that's really it. You know, they've been keeping it under wraps, they've been keeping it hidden. There was even like this huge thing before the film actually played of all the cast together begging the audience not to spoil anything, right? To keep it secret for the fans to have that surprising experience in the theaters. And as far as her character is concerned, we'll address it more in the spoiler section, but I will say Sadie Sink left a impression on the audience. She delivered an appropriate performance. I'm not sure if this is her first film, but I am aware that, you know, she was obviously on Stranger Things before this, and now she's more transitioning into becoming a movie star. So getting such a big role in not only the MCU, but inside of a Spider-Man film like this, she left a huge impression. I was satisfied with the role she was given and with her performance inside this film, and I'm looking forward to seeing where they go next with her character in the future. And now as far as the characters, that's pretty much for the most part everything that I wanted to address until like later on in the spoiler section. I do want to make sure I touch on the Spider-Man suit. I thought it looked pretty damn cool inside this movie. Okay, they went with like a classic red and blue, but they changed the logo a bit from what we've seen in the past inside the MCU out of Tom Holland's Spider-Man. And yeah, badass suit. He was in crazy physical shape for this role. Okay, fantastic shape. Shout out to Tom Holland for pushing himself to the limit to bring us this, what I would say is honestly a classic performance of the Spider-Man character. And yeah, okay, there's so many positives when it comes to this film. And to be honest, after getting done watching it, I really don't have any negatives when it comes to this film. So we're going to skip the negative section. We're going to jump straight into my overall review for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Look guys, overall, this is what fans have been wanting when it comes to the Spider-Man character. This is what MCU Spidey has been missing. They've addressed all of the criticisms, they fixed everything wrong with the character, and Tom Holland delivers a generational performance as Spider-Man, as Peter Parker. He gives the best of both worlds, not only in Peter Parker's life with what Peter Parker is personally going through in his personal life and in his relationships that he's trying to rekindle, but also they give a satisfying performance as Spider-Man, right? With the quips, with the suit, with the traversal, with everything. They even recreated some comic book shots which were straight off like the front page of comic books, so that was awesome right there. Love that they took time to include that inside of this movie. The villains, okay, really cool inside of here. Scorpion does his thing. You get a little glimpse of Tombstone. Of course, Sadie Sink inside this film, not going to address who she's playing, but she left a huge impression on the audience and on me specifically. Okay, I'm now a fan of Sadie Sink going forward, and I can't wait to see her included more inside the MCU in the future, if that's going to happen whatsoever. And of course, John Bernthal as the Punisher, solid. Mark Ruffalo as the Hulk, solid. This film had the proper emotional depth that it needed to have. I think this is the most emotional movie when it comes to MCU Spidey so far. And yeah, Tom Holland knocked it out of the park here. Marvel knocked it out of the park here. I want to shout out to the writers, the writing here, and everything they managed to achieve, weaving in these different heroes where you would need all of this Marvel knowledge. You would have needed to watch like Daredevil, the Punisher series way back in the day, all of this type of stuff. The fact that they managed to weave all of that into here with the writing while still making this plot feel cohesive and feel personal to Spider-Man as a character and as a whole, man, this was probably, quite honestly, my favorite Spider-Man movie to date, and is honestly, it's competing with Spider-Man 2, Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 2, and it's competing with the last MCU film, the last Spider-Man MCU film, that being Spider-Man No Way Home. I think it puts itself in that top 3 Spider-Man movie conversation in competition for that #1 spot, and this is probably my favorite showcase of Spider-Man so far. Definitely inside the MCU, but probably overall, in terms of even including Tobey Maguire in that conversation, and I grew up on those films, right? I hold that classic Spider-Man trilogy near and dear. But man, Tom Holland's my guy right now. Loved this film through and through. I was thoroughly impressed and very satisfied with how this movie turned out. And with that being said, if I had to rate this film, I would go ahead and give Spider-Man Brand New Day a 10 out of 10. It gets the 10 out of 10. Now, am I a little biased? Of course. It's Marvel. It's Spider-Man. Right? I grew up on these things, but honestly, this was a fantastic movie and a fantastic time at the theaters. I think you're all going to be very, very satisfied with the outcome of this film, honestly. I can't really see anyone hating it. Of course, there's always a contrarian out there. There's always a nitpicker out there. Sometimes I am that person. Okay, but man, what they managed to do with this film, very impressed. Now, I do want to address a little bit of spoilers, okay, because it's exciting. It's exciting how much impact this is going to have for the MCU going forward. So let's go ahead and transition into my spoilers for Spider-Man Brand New Day. All right, guys, spoiler section, spoiler section. Haven't done one of these in a while for a movie review, but let's go ahead and address it. Let's talk about some of these spoilers. We got to start off on a high note. Okay, let's talk about Sadie Sink being revealed as Jean Grey inside the MCU. The MCU, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, finally has their own Jean Grey. Of course, this is like the most powerful X-Men, if not in the #1 spot, then definitely that #2 spot. And yeah, it's a huge reveal. It has huge, I don't want to say consequences, it has huge impact for the Marvel Cinematic Universe going forward, because this character's power level is insane, and we got to see that inside of this movie. Okay, and what's funny is, going into it, if you've been paying attention to, you know, just online news when it comes to Marvel or Spider-Man, you would have known that she's Jean Grey, right? Because every single fan was speculating it. They were saying, I think she's playing Jean Grey. I'm pretty sure she's playing Jean Grey. Every single person was saying that here, and it is confirmed to be true inside of here. So the fans were all right. Marvel failed to keep it under wraps. They tried their hardest, right? They made Sadie Sink not be able to say it during the press tour whatsoever, but she's Jean Grey. That is kind of the main villain for this film, but not really, right? It was Damage Control that was the actual main villain in the end. I thought that was a nice twist there from the film. But yeah, Sadie Sink's performance as Jean Grey, generational. A great debut inside the MCU. Love what they did with this character. Love the way they wrote this character. Love how they gave her actual motivation going forward for what she actually wanted, right? She kept trying to get into this room this entire time, saying, where's VMAX? Where's VMAX? And then once they finally capture her and she looks up and she sees a vent Max with ENT and vent, not Demigod ENT, but shout out to Demigod ENT, of course. I hope you're all enjoying the video. But yeah, they took the ENT out of vent Max. She's looking for it the entire time. Even the Damage Control guys, like, I don't know what the hell VMAX is. What are you talking about? And it turns out that, again, once she was captured, she looks up at the ceiling, sees the VMAX, and realizes, oh, this is where my sister was, and this is where the room is that she likely passed away. And that was like the last telepathic message that she ever sent out to me. And she was looking for that the whole time. Great. Fantastic. The way they managed to showcase Jean Grey's power with the body jumping, the possession, right? The way that they did it cinematically, the way Spider-Man was able to follow it, the way she couldn't get into Spider-Man's mind. She got a small glimpse at his face and had a memory of his, but she couldn't get all the way in like she could everyone else. Fantastic stuff. Once she finally got to let loose, right? Finally got to expand her powers, level up, and evolve, because they really pushed her to her limit as they were doing those unethical tests and experiments on her psychic ability, right? And then they just unlocked an entirely new level of the power scaling of Jean Grey. The entire radius of the city, of the building, was just stuck in like this psychic vortex. That shit was crazy as hell. Okay, I love what they did with this character inside this movie. How it's going to impact the MCU going forward. Are we going to get an actual proper X-Men movie that's a part of the MCU? Of course, they're bringing in the X-Men for Doomsday. We all seen that in the trailer. I'm very excited. Okay, are they going to have her in Doomsday? Probably not, right? They're probably saving that for after, for the next phases of the MCU. This was the second movie in phase 6 of the MCU, by the way. But fantastic stuff. Love the backflashes with her sister, Sarah, as they were calling her. Now, constantly, they kept showing her in this color palette and showing like this hair scrunchie for hers. It was green and yellow, right? Green and yellow, green and yellow. Which Marvel character wears that, especially when it comes to like the X-Men? Well, of course, it's Rogue. All right, I think this was like a soft launch for Rogue inside the MCU. They never directly said it. They didn't even really make a hint towards it outside of the fact that her scrunchie was a certain color. And outside of that, they kind of left it at that. Okay, they even call her Sarah, which is not Rogue's actual name from the comic books. And if you search up this character, I'm pretty sure that's who that was, though. They hint at her being dead. I don't think she's dead. All right, you got to see the body dead on the ground inside the MCU for it to actually be confirmed that a character is dead at this point, because they always end up bringing them back. I think they're going to bring the sister back. I think it's going to be Rogue. We're going to have that character be entered into the MCU. And yeah, if I'm wrong, you know, let me know down below. If I'm missing something there, let me know down below, because there's always that possibility, but I'm pretty sure that's where they were going with this character. Okay, now post-credit scenes. Let's talk post-credit scene. There's only one here, and it's very short, it's very silly, but it's very huge at the same same time. Now, at first, I'm like, oh, they made us wait till the end for this BS, right? They're giving us, you know, the sleight of hand trick and not really gonna give us something at the end that we all waited for. But no, okay, we get the Spidey tracker. It's like, oh, Spider-Man's here. It's Ned's voice. It's funny. I'm like, okay, you know, it's gimmicky, whatever. We got our post-credit scene, whatever. But then you see Spider-Man in the Spider Tracker move, get shot out way deep into space, way like into another universe, it seemed like. And that's where we left off right there. I'm guessing it's going to have something with Avengers Doomsday. They do hit us with that Spider-Man will return tagline, but they don't say in Avengers Doomsday. It's already pretty much been confirmed that he's not going to be inside that film. Of course, they could always surprise us, but they pretty much already came out and said, like, no, Spider-Man's not going to be a part of this. But clearly something is going to happen inside Doomsday that more than likely shoots Peter Parker to an entirely different universe. I'm guessing that's what we got to see with that post-credit scene there. Very cool stuff. Okay, I enjoyed that very much. Now, what else is there to talk about when it comes to spoilers? Him with MJ, right? Bringing MJ to the Punisher's hideout, all the booby traps, that stuff was really cool. Frank Castle is amazing inside this film. Zendaya, right? Zendaya as MJ finding the note. What a scene, man. He left the note behind. He made a slight mistake. If you were paying attention, you would have caught it when he just runs out of there. But she reads the note, and it's a really bittersweet scene because you've been waiting for it the whole movie. But at the end of the day, like, she tells him, listen, you know, I read the note. Whatever spell you had done on me, it worked perfectly. I don't have not one memory that I could remember from our life beforehand. That's pretty much a completely different person, right, than me. So, man, that was sad there. But then you get the satisfying payoff at the end where he does the little best friend handshake with Ned, and that muscle memory is there for Ned. And he goes, oh, my Peter, right? Like, he understands and remembers that, oh, Peter Parker. So the memories are still within him, which means they could still be within MJ too, right? But of course, that fake out scene, we got to talk about that. Right? Her jumping to all the different bodies, fantastic. Her jumping into MJ. Spider-Man thinking he got there early enough for it not to happen, but she already possessed MJ before he even got there. And then that reveal scene where you're like, okay, let me see what's under the mask. And then she kisses Peter Parker, and there's this huge, like, typical, you know, love story that's happening. And then the rug pull and the reveal that no, none of that is happening. She already possessed MJ way before this, and her just rubbing it in Peter's face like, bro, MJ wouldn't even like this, you know, rekindling of a love story. That's way too corny for MJ's character, at least her depiction inside the MCU. Fantastic stuff here. So many surprises for the audience. Him seeking out Hulk to try and figure out how to dampen his spider abilities that were expanding, right? Tapping into like the psychological nature of Peter Parker, him having these headaches, his arachnid hormones starting to drastically rise because of all the emotional turmoil he's going through, seeing MJ at the party kiss someone else, all the mental torment that put him through. Fantastic stuff here, guys. Fantastic stuff. I think we addressed, for the most part, everything that I wanted to address. Okay, I didn't mention in the non-spoiler section that Crondone is playing Tombstone, right? You got to see Tombstone. That was pretty cool. A little, you know, cameo and smaller Spider-Man villain, but it was cool to see him in here. And also the dude playing Crondone, I think how you pronounce his name, was the guy from Black Lightning. If you watched CW Black Lightning back in the day, you know how good that show used to be. That was cool to see him get a shot inside an actual, like, big superhero film, right? And stay within the superhero genre. That was cool. And yeah, I think we touched on all the main spoilers for the most part and everything that I wanted to talk about. So thank you guys for sitting through the spoiler section. I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm going to try to get this up as fast as possible. That's why I was excited to go to this early Wednesday showing of this screening so that I can get the review on the channel as fast as possible and we could talk movies once again down in the comment section down below. So as usual, guys, those are my thoughts on the Spider-Man Brand New Day film. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this film down in the comment section down below. If you don't know what we do here on WGOT, we do film, TV, and pop culture based content. So if you're interested in this type of content, you're in the right place. Hit subscribe, hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and catch you in the next one, guys. Peace.